Quotes are a terrific motivator, and podcasts are the wave of the future. Pretty soon, all of your cars are going to come with podcasts preloaded. Technology. The world is so radically different today, even than it was from 20 years ago because of technology and media production. I am having an absolute blast producing this podcast. And thank you once again for joining me this week. And kind of related to the production of this podcast, before we get into this week's quote, I'd like to say something about producing this podcast. Once I decided that I wanted to do it and the format that I was going to use and how often I was going to produce each episode, quickly after that, I decided that I wanted to go out and get, and I'm glad I made that slip up and I'll explain to you in a minute. I decided to go out and get coaching. Now, coaching, it shows you your blind sides. It is skilled criticism. Primary example is the mistake that I just made when I said get, G-I-T, as opposed to get, G-E-T. Whenever I would do an exercise with my coach, he would always tell me it's get, not get. Just little things like that that can help you in your life if you get coaching. If you look at all of the great athletes, all of them had great coaches. Jack Nicklaus, probably the greatest golfer of all time, would get coaching after a bad round of golf. And check this out. Michael Jordan, who many believe is the greatest basketball player of all time, he said that he believed that his greatest skill was that he was coachable. He felt that that was his greatest skill. If you look at Tiger Woods, he started getting coaching around 2 years old for golfing from his dad. Now, on a side note on that, I also believe that that may have contributed to his downfall, the fact that he was so regimented at such an early age. But I digress. That's just a side note because I'm obviously not a psychiatrist, but I do believe that. I could go on and on about coaching. If there is something great that you want to accomplish in your life, that you want to do, consider getting coaching to help you do that. So enough on that about coaching. This week's quote comes from Oprah. Now, you know you've made it in life when people know you by your first or your last name only. Sort of like Dez, Dak, Zeke. Oops, I'm sorry. I apologize for that. Right now, I'm showing my bias toward the Dallas Cowboys. Sorry about that. I apologize. It won't ever happen again. This week's quote deals with gratitude. If you can learn to develop an attitude of gratitude, it can change your life for the better. Let me be just a little bit stronger with that. It will change your life for the better. Being thankful and having an attitude of gratitude and focusing on the good in your life, it can change things for you. It really can. Now, here is Oprah's quote. What you focus on expands. And when you focus on the goodness in your life, you create more of it. Opportunities, relationships, even money flowed my way when I learned to be grateful. And check this out. No matter what happened in my life. That's saying a lot because none of us want negatives in our life. But Oprah is saying, even when the bad things came, when she kept her focus on the good that was in her life, that is what expanded in her life. Don't go out and try this, but if you are driving on the freeway and you focus on either the car on the left of you or the right of you, and you keep your focus on that car, you will drift toward that car. What you focus on grows in your life. If you focus on the negative, that is what will grow in your life. It reminds me, and I'm going to do this a lot in my podcast, even though I have a quote of the week, a lot of times I'm going to also give other quotes that sort of bolster that quote or build up that quote or help support whatever it is we're talking about that week. But in terms of focusing on the good, like Oprah is talking about here, Helen Keller has a quote, and that quote is, "When you focus on the sun, the shadows fall behind you." Or put another way, when you focus on the positive, the negatives fall behind you. Many years ago, I made the decision to stop watching the local news. I'm certain that my general outlook on life is much better because of that decision. You know, you've heard it before, what is said about the local news. If it bleeds, it leads. There's this constant focus on the sensational, and we all know why that's done. It's done for ratings. Also, kind of in this vein, several years ago, I stopped following politics. Great decision, in my opinion. You might say, well, Greg, you can't put your head in the sand. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you on that. But I'm quite certain, and I'm pretty sure, that what goes on in your house and what goes on in my house is infinitely more important than what goes on in the White House. That's just one man's opinion, though. More of an emphasis on what you do have in your life as opposed to what you don't have is a key ingredient for having a happier life. There's just no getting around that. There's a guy that I used to follow quite regularly on the social media app Snapchat. And I had to stop following him because I noticed that I was starting to focus on all of the things that he had, and the things that I didn't have in comparison. And it was starting to bring me down. You've heard the phrase before, if you compare, you despair. I was focused on the wrong thing. Gratitude places the emphasis or the focus on what you do have. Learn to do that, and you will not regret it. I'm certain that you will not regret it. If it worked for Oprah, it can work for you. Now, I'm not at all trying to suggest that if you focus on what is good in your life, you're going to become a billionaire like Oprah is many times over. But I will be bold enough to suggest that your life would be a lot happier. I want to thank you so much again for joining me this week. And wherever you are listening today, I wish that you would hit the subscribe button and keep coming back again and again. And remember this, quotes don't work unless you do. This, quotes don't work unless you do.